Go ahead.
I agree, Jan. I haven't had
Jan,
time.
you can start when you want.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. So let's call the meeting to order. Thanks everybody for showing up. This is a great turnout. Well, I'm looking at all these names: John, Ruben, Bob, George, Max, myself. Great. Did I miss anybody? Oh, yeah. I gotta hit the arrow, I guess. There we go. There she is. She's at the end. John, how are we doing? I know we're in the meeting, but how are we doing with COVID and the hospital? And
we're seeing increased numbers, and no surprise with that as it's happening across the state. This week has been a week where we've been really busy making some changes at the Damascotta campus to be ready for a surge. We've added 3 additional beds on the medical surgical unit, and we've stood those up this week. And last weekend, we moved our urgent care folks from Boothbay Harbor up to the Miles campus. They're occupying a space that's off to the side of the ED, the DB White building, but they're seeing patients there as well. We're just seeing a lot more people. I think there's a lot more anxiety out there in terms of the numbers that we're seeing, and rightfully so. It's all community spread, and we haven't really seen much of an impact of the Thanksgiving travel yet. So, one thing that is telling is within in a 7-day period across the state, we had 1,800 cases. So that's a pretty sizable number in a week's time, considering we have 14,000 cases total. So yeah, it's a challenging time, and it's really hard for folks around the holidays for sure. And with Christmas coming up, and the CDC's guidance for families to essentially not gather, it's going to get even tougher for folks. So, but we're doing all that we can to be ready for the surge, and doing a lot of preparation for when the vaccine arrives as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is that the real challenge is to keep doing what we're doing until that vaccine's available. And good news, I heard that the Canadian equivalent to the CDC approved the Pfizer vaccine just yesterday, I think, or today, maybe even. Yeah. So that's. Yeah.
I think that the news media has not been doing a great job of, though, is educating the public that John Q. Public is not going to see a vaccine for quite some time. And,
absolutely.
They're talking a lot about how the vaccine's here, but it's not going to get to those folks anytime real soon, unfortunately.
The thing that's, I guess, important not to forget, but we shouldn't do anything with it. I think Maine is probably one of the luckiest states, and I think Lincoln County is one of the luckiest counties. And I talk to people around the country for business, and boy, we don't know how bad it could get. I mean, people can't be too afraid.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, in Maine, Lincoln County is the 3rd lowest county in terms of the number of cases, and our rate per 10,000 population is not nearly as high as the other counties as well. So you're absolutely right. Maine is only behind Vermont in the number of cases nationwide. So we've done very well. And I'm just hoping that people, I know that the mask fatigue and that feeling of isolation is really impacting people. How can it not? But I'm hoping people can stay the course and recognize that, I'm masking for you, you're masking for me, and we're all in this together until it's over. And that's a message we've been sticking with, but I know that people are tiring of it, and that's understandable, but we sort of have to stay the course.
What makes me particularly crazy is when people think that they have a right to not wear a mask. I guess they have a right to not have brakes in their car too.
It's a whole movement, George.
Well, it just isn't. I'm sure by now, many people who had not known anyone who had COVID or had been affected by COVID, it's changing. And, my sister's husband's father has it now, and he's in an Alzheimer's unit, which is awfully difficult to deal with. you know, when you think about it, 100 people in the facility have COVID.
Mm.
Can you
And
imagine?
it's just over the line into New Hampshire. But it's hard to wrap your brain around this. And it's hard to wrap one's brain around, you know, what the affect is and how hard it is to be separate, not together. That is very, very challenging. But when you see, I mean, it's just like a fire in other places. It's awful. And for me, the hardest thing is the loss of life and the people who have to die alone without their loved ones in the hospital. And I don't know if people are taking that in, but that weighs so heavily. And then the burden on the healthcare people who are there trying to substitute for loved ones and having to help people die alone. And you see their faces and you see what it's doing to them. I don't know if anybody can really count what the cost is already to us. So it harms me, and it goes so deep when people don't take this seriously. It's like a knife twisting in my body.
I cannot imagine what it would be like to be a healthcare worker taking care of somebody who thinks it's a hoax.
In some of the interviews, they've been interviewing some of them.
Yeah, I just can't even.
Yeah.
Anyway, and how this affects economic development.
It does.
Well, no, this is the last thing I'll do that's out in left field here, but we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings with different parts of the company, and we're doing very well at it. But we've really come to realize that the chance encounter in a doorway with somebody who you weren't even thinking about talking to, there's an awful lot of things that don't get done or communicated when you're relying on Zoom meetings and not circumstantial connections or coincidental, serendipitous connections. It's just really, it affects everything. And we're lucky in Lincoln County. We're really lucky.
All right. Well, I don't really have a whole lot, obviously, to report. I could tell the folks here that the Waldoboro Food Pantry has been very, very busy, and I happen to be one of the directors there now, and we're very fortunate to get some grant money over the last little while, and Max is working with the town to help us get some things covered. And you know, this is a time, this is with COVID and Christmas and everything, this is the time where the food bank is really earning its keep in the town of Waldoboro. I could tell you that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hungry families out there. And that's kind of all I got. Max, I know that you've got some updates for us. Max?
When you're saying updates,
well, you were going to
updates or just anything in general?
Just in general, I know that there's been some discussion again on the Miller School. So maybe you could.
You mean 80 Gray?
Oh, Miller School. Geez, 80 Gray. Sorry.
I was gonna say. We've been talking about the wrong school this whole time.
I know. I've just moved it. Or 80 Gray, and that I guess there's a group looking at maybe turning it into a park of some sort.
I don't even know. If I'm being honest, I don't even know too much about the park. 1 week ago, I do need to stress that that's still in negotiations. Like the non-binding warrant happened.
Yep.
What I've been saying ever since then, it still hasn't changed. Even before the vote happened, is it being approved doesn't mean the building has been sold or anything yet. It just means we enter negotiations with Volunteers of America to create an options agreement so that for a year or 2 years, whatever the timeline is, we're not going to sell or look for other options, and in return, Volunteers of America is going to do their research and make sure what they can do is possible. This is what it's been leading up to. And one part of the agreement is at least to make sure, what Volunteers of America wants for properties. Leading up to it, what I've always been told, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but Volunteers of America only wants the school. They don't want the properties nearby. So we've been moving on with that. It wasn't until last week or past week or whatever that I was told that someone else wants to turn it into a park. And when I said turn it into a park, I didn't realize that mean tearing down the building, not going with Volunteers of America, and then turning it into a park. There was a select board meeting.
Terrible idea.
Well, I'll also be honest, I wasn't in the select board meeting yesterday when there was the presentation on that. I was talking with Ruben because the grant you mentioned that I got that is helping the food pantry. I also kind of want to use what's left to improve the conference room so that when we're doing more remote meetings like this, and if people are like the select board meeting, we can have something in the like a TV in the back to improve like seeing people who are doing it or doing these meetings, so we're not ignoring them and all that. But I'm digressing. Bob would have to speak more about, and I'm going to throw Bob on the spot. You would have to speak about a park, but to me, I'm not touching the park. I have no idea what that's about. It seems like a Hail Mary when it seems like an 11th hour push when we're about to make a deal anyways. So Bob,
it sounds, if I heard you right, that there's nothing preventing the town from keeping the park there anyway, or the ball fields or whatever we want to do with that.
Right. And that's why I'm confused about. When I heard let's turn it into a park, I thought, oh yeah, let's use grant money and improve Philbrook ball field, that little undeveloped lot between the school and the ball field, even the tennis courts we're keeping. We can improve that. And then I just saw the plans. I was told everything, and it involved the school being torn down and all of that being turned into a park. And that's where I got a bit questionable.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Recorded here, right, Max?
What?
We're being recorded, correct?
We are being recorded and we're live. And that's why I'm saying like most of the stuff can't be said.
Well, I can tell you what happened at last night's meeting.
Right.
So Ann Pine made a presentation. She is chairman of the 80 Degree Subcommittee as well, and advocated for a park and had a set of drawings that Stephen Moore and Sarandon had drawn up. They're a landscape architecture firm in Portland. And the plans basically conceived moving the tennis courts to about where the front of the school is now, and preserving the wetlands at the back of the lot, and creating some green spaces for, I don't know, I suppose soccer and other outdoor sports. And then kind of in the middle of that whole thing was a drawing of a skating rink.
It is true that this proposal would tear down the building instead of putting it to use.
Yes, it's correct. So what the board did was refer it to the Recreation Committee, and that's where it is.
It's the appropriate place for it.
I mean,
so where's the Volunteers of America agreement? Where's that stand?
We have a draft memorandum of understanding that is working at the subcommittee level, and that will be in front of the select board hopefully by their next meeting, and we can move forward with the memorandum of understanding.
would they be mutually exclusive to have the building with people in it, attracting people because there's a ball field nearby or tennis courts? I mean, it makes it a better place to live if you upgrade the neighborhood.
I agree completely, George, and that's one of the ideas we tossed around at the select board, not during the presentation or after the presentation, but during the course of the meeting. I mean, they're not necessarily polar opposites. They do complement one another.
Well, so I think the question about the status of the agreement for a year with the volunteers.
I just threw a year out there.
Yeah, we don't know what the standstill will be like. Or how long it'll be.
But I think that's certainly a priority to figure out what the details of that are, because we started with that first.
That's my feeling too.
Okay. And then, thank you for that update. And then also, Max, Bob sent me a note, I think from not this select board meeting, but the previous one, that the Economic Development Committee was going to be asked to look at properties, vacant properties or town-owned properties, and to see if there's any opportunity for development or sale or parks or whatever, I guess. And so maybe, Bob, you could give us an update on that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Max. We did vote on that, didn't we? We've asked the EDC to take up that mantle and look at what the town has, and you were going to prepare, I think, a list of, when you have time.
The key word there, when I have time.
Yeah, a list of those properties so that we can go through them one by one, and as a committee, as an EDC, to figure out what might be done.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was voted on.
I think it was too. Yeah.
To
All right,
create the list.
I think, to Bob's point, Max is working on that, but he's inundated with other stuff.
Every time I keep thinking I'm going to have a day where I can get to it, someone gives me a bit of a higher priority issue. Basically.
Having the inventory will be huge. I mean, knowing what the holdings are and how they look and where they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have the inventory, but as the minutes show, I was told to wait until I can get a map ready that shows a visual of it.
Makes sense.
And I really just need like a good 1-2 hours to just, not even 2 hours, probably just 1 hour to just, highlight those properties. And I swear every time I pull out that list, something happens.
Better stop
right.
pulling out the list.
Well, I'm not sure we'd be able to do anything with it for the next little bit anyway, but certainly in the new year, we'd probably want to start looking at that. So, Max, anything else from the town side?
The other non-binding warrant article regarding Sylvania passed as well. So similar to 80 Gray, towns and negotiations, just to get those terms outlined. We're going to wait on that. And the community center one passed. The recreation committee is going to be handling that one, I believe. The one regarding Lincoln Health passed, which is great.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything to it right now, because with COVID, I don't know where everyone's budgets are at. And again, that's more of Julie's baby. So I'm not going to jump or ruin her parade on that. What else? HVAC system passed. So it's not like that's something for this committee. I think that's the main, I think those are the big items. In terms of planning board, we haven't had anything since the last meeting. I thought we were going to have all these great things like a campsite up at Wagner Bridge. I thought we were going to have a brand new solar farm at Controversy Lane. Unfortunately, the campground had to withdraw because I won't get into the specific reasons, but the campsite had to pull out. And the solar developer, I've been talking with them for a while now, just because we need to there were a lot of issues that had to be ironed out before they could have an application submitted. I was told today that there's a good deal that's been reached. So I'm praying every moment that it's true. And I hope that I will see an application in January.
You may have a better update than me, but I know that when I drive up the road to the dump, the other farm, I was there one day and there was 5 semis that must have been full of solar panels. So they're they're not fooling around. There's going to be a lot of.
Or they were lost.
Yeah, the one over at Travis Reed's property that was approved earlier this year.
Yeah, I think that's really coming along.
Yep, they're finishing up some technical stuff here at the town office, but I believe they aim to be producing power by the end of January of 2023.
Oh, okay, 2 years.
21. I'm kidding, everyone.
I did talk to them about buying electricity through them, and there's still a document that's in their court, not mine, I think.
Right.
But yeah, no, I just hope they're all straight, so I don't have to wonder when they're going to straighten them. That's a transfer station joke.
Well, it's certainly great to start seeing all this in Waldoboro, and it's good that there are a lot of private individuals who have a lot of land available, and they're taking advantage of this time.
Yep.
Hey, Max, would you happen to know who purchased Philippe's Gallery on right on Main Street there, the old bank building? There was a sale pending sign. So I'm just curious. Oh,
if it's sale pending, then I don't know. But if the sale's been completed, then I would just have to go check the tax card.
I'm just curious if they're going to run it as a business or what their intent was, the folks who bought it.
I've heard rumors of what it's going to be: residential, art gallery, restaurant. I've heard multiple things. I don't know until it's actually done.
That would make a great restaurant.
That would be nice.
With the vault in the back, would be awesome.
Well, and the building next to it, I think, is going to become available for some new use. Dr. Bowden is moving out of there.
That's a nice building too.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. So I don't know if we have any, Ruben, do you have any updates on the technical side of fiber or anything like that?
So for CTC, I had the pleasure of speaking to the select board yesterday, which was really nice. And I just gave them the sort of short version that Chapel Hill and the surrounding roads are done from the CTC's point of view. We're still going to check on people, but our work is complete. Charter has spent what must be at least tens of thousands of dollars. So now we're on to looking at additional remaining roads and going on to thinking outside the box. I've been talking with LCI, LCI tries to hire me every other time I try to talk to them. That will never happen, in case anyone ever asks you. But what I do know is I do know a lot about short to medium distance wireless networking. So I'm talking to them and stating some cases for getting straight shot, either professional grade Wi-Fi access points or 5G cellular. I'm also not saying 5G cellular in large groups because I know people freak out about it. It's radio. There's always another radio technology. So that's the short version of what's going on with the CTC. Charter's been, we've had our fits and starts, I know, but I feel like they've communicated with us reasonably well. I also think after this, unless they change something or want to do a special project, that's all we need from Charter right now. And that's probably all Charter needs from us. Hard one on both sides. They'll get more money. We'll get more internet.
Is I think I heard that I think it was federal money. COVID has highlighted who has decent internet and who doesn't in the country. And I thought I heard that there was some more federal money that was going to be out in support of getting better internet for more people. Is that something that is real or true or something?
It is real. And in fact, you're right. I skipped the whole thing I went over yesterday. So SpaceX, have you heard of SpaceX? They make rockets and stuff that land themselves. They got $880 million, I think, from the FCC. And that is for 35 states, including Maine. And that's important because for a Charter, fiber is 30 grand a mile. SpaceX is low Earth orbit satellites that will deliver bandwidth that's, your close to your basic cable, 50 to 150 megabits with under 100 milliseconds in latency. Those numbers are important because when you get into that area, you can do what we're doing now. You can do remote learning. You can have real-time conversations. And while it might not be perfect all the time, it's really a pretty incredible thing. It's in beta now. So
Is it
that's
satellite driven?
it is, but it is not like HughesNet. HughesNet satellites are tens of thousands of miles away. SpaceX satellites are 374 miles up. So they're very close. And that's how they're achieving low latency. These are very small, very light satellites. And they've got, I'd have to Google to see how many there are. They've got a lot up. They're going to put a lot more up. And that's how they're dealing with failure rates and all that stuff.
Hey, Ruben?
Yeah.
You sent out a link where one could go and actually sign up. I think SpaceX is trying to ferret out how much demand there is and get people lined up. Why don't you forward that to everybody on this committee too? And you can just give them your email address basically, and then they'll keep you up to date on what they're doing. I thought that was great that you did that.
So I'm going to show my ignorance here, but that's what I do. So there's satellites streaming by, and they when one moves out of range, one moves into range. I mean, is it that kind of a thing?
Did we lose Ruben?
I think
Last.
very ironic, I'd say.
Yep, we lost him.
Doesn't the
George-
satellite
George,
follow
the question was that
follow the
bad.
rotation?
George, did I
I
say
think the satellites follow the rotation of the Earth, don't they?
Oh, so you have a satellite with your name on it up there that's just.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense that it would be
Oh, there's Ruben.
going in circles.
Well,
But I'm no expert. Not like Ruben.
I thought
Right.
that the reason
Bad.
An expert,
satellites
just like
stayed
the
up was because
ones
they were
joined.
spinning around on the end of a gravitational field.
I asked him,
Are we talking about space? I love space.
Yeah, no, when you
Yeah, we were-
disappeared for lack of apparently internet.
That's weird, right?
I was asking, is it one satellite that lives over Maine, Waldoboro, or do they just keep coming and the next one shows up?
It is a mesh network constellation. So when
Oh.
they're done, it will be thousands of satellites that interlink. They can do multiple transmit receive links. And I think Bob was saying that I'd sent out an email to the CTC. I'm going to dig for that now and send it to everyone here.
Good.
The other thing I'll forward is the email I wrote to make sure everyone on the select board definitely had the highlights I wanted to cover yesterday. So
is this the equivalent of everybody gets a hotspot? I mean, or is there something where it feeds a place that then feeds wire? Or
nope. So the way this would work is this feeds a receiver you put in your yard. It looks like a charcoal grill. It stands a little bit high, not tens of feet, but 6 or 8. And there's not a bandwidth cap. So if you go like 5G cellular, the speeds are impressive, but you're paying 10 or 20 gigs, and then after that you pay a rate per gig. This is more like terrestrial internet that either doesn't have a cap or has a very high bandwidth cap. So something that people could use, like most of us on this call are using the internet, where you don't have to really budget your data or worry about a huge bill. Or like on HughesNet, where you get under a gig per day and the bills can really stack up very quickly.
so is Spectrum down there letting the air out of their tires, or how's this going to work?
Well, honestly, I'm pretty sure that, so SpaceX hasn't gone IPO yet, but if they make Elon Musk mad, I think he could buy them. Spectrum is doing stuff, because Spectrum has to be wired, they're doing things like we did, where they're only wiring at a certain density. The other thing Spectrum is doing, as much as people have talked about cable, you can push a huge amount of data down coax. I'm paying for 940 down and 45 up, and that's only going to get faster. We're getting to a point, and this is one of the things I want to see. Eventually, you won't know how fast your internet is, and you probably won't care. That's where this stuff is all headed. Eventually, the bandwidth is going to be, you get your house, you get your water, your electricity, and your data, and it's just on. That's
Wow.
where the future's going.
how soon?
That's a great question. It depends on which billionaire gets mad at the other billionaire.
Okay.
That's every time there's a tech war. This happens. I'm seeing it with computer parts now. You'll see it with data. So We'll see. COVID ending is, well, COVID's good for pushing this on, but at some point people need to be in their jobs and making money again too. So there's two sides to it.
Yep.
This brings me to one other question I want to ask, and I don't know where we'd put it in the meeting, so I'll just ask it. I would love to find out what businesses in the area have basic computer networking challenges. And this isn't so I can go out and bill people and fix their stuff, but when I was at Downey School of Massage, there was really just one thing that wasn't quite right. Everything worked. There was a minor configuration thing that the guys that sell printers didn't know. The guys that sell internet don't care. And I've forgotten his name, but the young man that manages the computer there basically wrote down the thing he was missing on an index card. I want to know who doesn't know that so I can tell them, because at some point people are going to have to dust their stuff off and turn their business back on. And I think if we can have the businesses in our town just have that basic information, I'd be happy to do that. I gave out my cell phone number last night. I gave out my email last night. I'm sure at some point I'll regret that, but we're not there yet. So as you talk to people, I would like to find out, who's having minor issues. Hey, I can never see my printers. Hey, my Wi-Fi seems to be terrible. Why? Hey, can you look at my internet bill? Those basic things.
So Ruben,
Mhm.
if we could work on a like a short survey that I can send out to the WBA members.
Yep.
And just to let them know that we're trying to get an idea of what kind of challenges people might be facing, turning on, pray God this spring, to get ready for some business. So if you want to do that, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I can rattle off a pretty short list, written an email to you. That shouldn't take long.
Okay. And then what we could do is we could post that survey on our Facebook page, and we could send that survey to other entities in town, and they could post it there too.
Yeah, and once we get that going, my focus is Waldoboro, and I want to fix, the home site first. Anything I generate in anything I'm on, I don't need to own. I don't care who uses it if it's useful. If someone comes up with a better spin, I'd like to know. But, a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Ruben's been incredibly generous with his time. And I want to thank him again.
It helps the town too. I live here. It's like you guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
Yeah.
Anytime.
All right. I'm going to kind of open it up here. Does anybody have any other items they'd like to discuss?
As I said before, we went live. The business park, all the businesses in there seem to be doing fine, or even growing in some cases. The eel project is not at all dried up. The logistics of international travel and some of their consultants and there's just COVID related delays, but that does seem like it's still going forward. And the company that was trying to do land-based oyster culture has got their money tank filled back up for a while, and they've got some very good people working with them now. Better, the next generation of people who are even more talented than the last generation. So I'm optimistic.
Wow.
On at last night's meeting, we heard a presentation from a guy in Iraqi named Sahib Al-Ahmed. He's been working with the Shellfish Committee, and he put an animation up there that showed tidal and current flows in the Madamic River. And then he placed positions for upwellers to maximize areas where clam seed could go out and set and grow clams. And this thing he's created I'm guessing it has multiple uses. The animation is supposed to be up on the town website, if it isn't already.
What is his business?
He's a student. He's a PhD doctoral student at UMaine in Orono.
Wow. Working
with Professor Lauren Ross as she's his advisor. And it's incredible the work that he's put together, they've put together. And of course, it only can happen with input from the Shellfish Committee. So they've developed this synergy and they're working together. And I'm guessing that once people see this, things will start clicking and say, wow, we can use that to, trace E. coli pollution in the river, or we can figure out where stuff is going from this location or that location, and where maybe it's optimal to place an intake for oysters or whatever.
Wow.
So it's worth looking at. I can
One
see
of-
why
one of
Samson
the things-
has so many clams.
One of the things that I wasn't going to mention, but I guess I will now. We continue to, well, it's kind of calmed down, but there is still this court ruling that said that the intertidal zone belongs to the adjacent landowner, which was well, I think you know that I think that that's incorrect.
Let's call it. Nope, never.
Never heard that. Okay, anyway, but it has an effect on like the salmon business in Belfast, or potentially this, because if you're trying to access the water, if you're not the actual landowner abutting the water, you face some questions. I don't know what it's going to take to get it straightened out, because when you research the actual history, it seems like a completely erroneous conclusion that the court reached, but I'm not. Anyway, but these all fit together because the intertidal zone access is part of land-based and not land-based aquaculture. And aquaculture is one of the strong futures of Maine, particularly with ocean acidification and water temperature changes and the lobster industry. Everything is impacted by the climate change issues. So we're going to have to adapt. Anyway, and so the ownership of the intertidal zone kind of comes back.
So is that decided, or is there still a appeal, or where's that at?
Well,
George?
it's interesting you put it that way, because the laws on the books in the state of Maine, going back for decades, have fairly explicitly made the intertidal zone and the seaweed in it a public resource. Everything about the laws and the behavior and the licensing and past activities all support that that the seaweed is a public resource and the intertidal zone is public land. That the original intent was to give easements to people to build docks, not easements to go clamming. So when you get that part frontwards, it changes everything. Now, the court ruling or the court decision or the court opinion flies right in the face of that. They are not compatible. The court ruling is not compatible with state law, and the legislature has never changed state law, even back to some of the earlier decisions that were similarly inconsistent with state law. So I don't know what's going to happen if it ever gets to being court, because court rulings are precedents, but this one is so unworkable that it's anyway. It seems like everybody's sort of calmed down a little bit about who's going to harvest where. Probably because you start getting into the question of, okay, well, you have to really show me deeds all the way back to when someone legitimately sold this intertidal zone to you, and there isn't one. There's just an assumption that it's owned by the landowner, but there's no place where the ownership was transferred. And if the burden is on the landowner to find the deed that began their ownership, or the person before them ownership, that gets to be somewhere between impossible and expensive. So it may be that the whole thing is just going to kind of calm down and no one's going to care when they start looking at the hill they've got to climb to
win that.
To win that, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, didn't mean to go down there, except that it does affect economic development, especially in Waldoboro, the seaweed capital of the country.
All right. Clams and seaweed.
Yes.
Hey. Not bad.
All right. Thanks, George. Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up? New business, old business?
I don't know if you want to know if there's any there. I had just seen on Facebook that the main kebab place in the back of behind the pharmacy, they are opening a second location in Rockland. So
We've eaten there. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's changed a
I can
little
vouch
bit.
for it.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's changed a little bit over time, but it's interesting.
What did you have, Jan, that was so good?
I usually stick with the chicken kebab with
Okay.
with their rice dish. Yeah, it's lovely.
we've eaten there once and we'll never go back, but maybe we need to give them another try.
I'll give him another chance.
I think,
Yeah.
okay.
When I hear the
Just
word,
go ahead.
when I hear the word kebab, I want to have something on a stick, and that's not what they do.
Yeah, there's no stick involved.
No sticks.
Yeah.
Feels like false advertising to me.
I thought it would be.
Like shish taouk instead of kebab.
Leave it to Bob.
Getting that.
He knows. Well, anyway, the food is not bad. It's pretty decent. I enjoyed also the rice dish that they had with different meats and stuff in it.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think it's gotten good. The fact that they can open a second location must be a good news.
We had some young people in our family staying with us back when they could and got food there. And as mysterious as the menu is, the food was good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I better go back.
Yes.
Thank you.
You might need a translator. Oh, I guess you don't need a translator.
That's funny.
right. Just
Any other old or new business?
well, I do have a quick thing on streetlights. I know that was the old
Oh,
favorite.
okay, go, and I have something for you too, but I'll let you go first.
Well, just very quick. We got those streetlights installed around April, May, and now that budget talks are going to be starting soon, I'm compiling lists to compare what it was a year before and this year now that we've had the streetlights, just to compare prices.
Yep.
Obviously, there's still a few months missing, but should get better soon. But just these last 2 months, if we're looking at figures, and so from September 30th to October 29th last year, 2019, I should say, the town was paying about $1,711.
Per month?
No, this was just for October of 2019.
A month.
Yes.
A month.
But as a comparison, this year with these streetlights, we paid, I believe, $265.43.
Wow.
Oh,
That's great.
I'm hoping I'm looking at the right line.
I hope so, too.
we are too.
Wow.
And then just as a second one, for August, well, this is for the month of September. Last year, it was $1,708. This year, it was $257.
Oh, wow.
$58.
We're going to have to start paying the selectmen.
So we're generating more than enough cash to pay down the debt on the lease, right?
I hope so. There's a little buffer that Peg told me that we've always had that little buffer, but we can just devote that if we need it. We did pay the first year's lease at the beginning of mid-November.
Right.
And I think because the town approved to refinance the debt, that means we can work towards having a lower interest rate on that as well, which I would love, because that means we can speed up paying it off a lot faster.
Pay the same amount and less interest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Pay off
that'd be
principal.
What's happening with the bonding, Max? I mean, it was approved.
ideal. I believe what we have to do now is just go out and get these rates, because the town has, I can't remember what it said, but I think like 2.5% is what we were aiming for. So if we can find someone who can do less than that, I assume then we can do that. We can do less, but we have to make sure we go out to we put it out there and say, hey, we're looking to do this. Is anyone able to refinance it?
Mhm.
But again, that's something that Julie and everyone's working towards. But yeah, I just wanted to give that street light update. And I'm going to have to drive around soon to see where all these street lights are, because I'm told that ironically, the new ones, and that might be the main issue, at the 235 Route 1 intersection, the one at the Dutch Neck, Gross Neck intersection, one right out here at the town office. Well, not here at the town office, like once you leave the door, but I'm talking about when you try to get on Route 1 from the town office, those lights are apparently out. aren't on, and I don't know why. We're within the 1 year warranty, so I'm going to make sure that it's, the street light, the fixtures themselves that are a problem, so we don't have to pay too much to get those replaced. But I'm gonna have to drive around and see if there's any other issues.
The one in front of my house is working, just FYI.
Perfect.
Hey, so one other thought I had is, who is tracking the solar array savings from the transfer station?
That is a good question. I know we took down that display. I think Peg is finance director, Peg. I believe she's still getting all the solar credits and updates from the transfer station.
We should review that on maybe like a quarterly basis or something like that.
All right.
To the extent it becomes part of conversations that support more people doing it, it absolutely should be at our fingertip.
Yeah.
My solar arch building up at the park, although we haven't used much electricity inside of it, I've got a great bank of energy that I've built up there, waiting for someone to really start using the building.
Wow.
It really works.
You lose that after 12 months, George, or do you?
Yeah, they nibble away at it if you don't use it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. I did look at that once for Peg. We were having a problem figuring out how the pumps that are used in the water district tie into this. And I'm not sure how that was resolved. But I can send out the numbers that I generated. This was a while back.
It'd be interesting to see it.
Yep.
All right, and that's actually all I have. Anyone else?
I just remembered my conclusion looking at that was, instead of paying 16 cents a kilowatt hour, we're paying 11.5 cents. And then when we buy it, it's ours and we don't pay anything.
Right.
So
and I'm trying to remember, was that 11 years?
6.
7, I think.
6.
What is it?
6 years to buy it, I think. We have a buyout provision in 6 after 6.
7.
How many
Okay.
years are we into it, Max?
I thought it was 7.
Okay.
It might be, hey, Max, it might be 6 now. We've had it for a couple of years, right?
I just think we ought to be putting money into something to be able to pay for it when the time comes.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and then with the street lights, after I think the 4th, 5th year, it should be fine. As in, after 4 or 5 years, we're not paying anyone anymore. But then after that, we're just getting all the savings, similar to the street lights, or the solar farm.
So that's actually, maybe we should have some kind of set aside some kind of fund, maybe.
That is something that, because once we do get to the end of that and we're starting to keep those savings, it comes down to a question of, I would like to have some type of like tech R&D type budget or something that we can do.
Yeah.
Something that with CTC, Ruben might have a million ideas. Ruben probably know. I could probably give Ruben, I think 15,000 is how much would be an estimated savings. But yeah, 15,000 a year. Ruben, what do you think you could do with that?
I designed a computer that cost 14. Could we do that? That would be I would love to work with this group. I mean, anyone who wants to sit down and innovate something, that's the most excited I get. So let's definitely do that.
Awesome.
But yeah.
All right. I think we've had a relatively short meeting, under an hour. So thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas. If I don't see you between now and then. Oh, Max has something.
I was just going to say, though, next meeting is scheduled for January 5th, 7 p.m. Is that still fine with everyone? Or are we Or do we want to move it at some other time just because that's right after the holiday season there? No preference?
I'm
And
fine
if
with
it's
it.
if it's Zoom, I'm gonna be here anyway.
I just want to
We're
make
well
sure.
quarantined, right?
Yeah, just want to make sure.
Putting it in my calendar.
Thanks
7 p.m.
for that.
All right, everybody. Well, happy holidays if I don't see you before then. And thanks everybody for your hard work, staying safe.
Thank you.
Thanks,